Aultemus, Ciora, and Zenti emerge from a portal in Margaery. They're suspended a few hundred feet in the air by thick, tall, red trees whose bark appear almost crystalline. Above them, leaves hanging from their gargantuan branches range from crimson to white, with shades of red and pink in between. Around each of these trees are various circular wooden platforms that extend far out, sometimes connecting to other nearby platforms, forming a base of the city. They are held together by more beams below them, keeping them up on the trees. At the base of the platforms, by the trees, are buildings that sometimes extend out, but are mostly carved into the tree trunks. Underneath these, there are pine trees making up the forest proper, but they are sparse and not too dense. The Valkyries here have pristine white feathers and are much bigger than typical Valkyries, about the same size as humans, but their wings are much smaller. 2 guards of the white winter Valkyrie type, and 1 well-dressed green Valkyrie stand by the portal to salute Zenti. The well-dressed male hands her a scroll, and she charges past him, takes the scroll, and puts it in her dress. I don't have time for pleasantries. What direction did you see them last? Zenti commands. Ma'am, you should... Shut up and tell me now, Zenti yells back. The Valkyrie doesn't react. One of the winter Valkyries mumbles, bitch, under his breath. Ciora is the only one who hears. She looks around to see most of the winter Valkyries who've noticed Zenti are talking amongst themselves with disgusted or annoyed expressions, rolling their eyes. They were headed west. A scout mentioned they might have seen someone by a logging town in that direction as, before he could finish, Zenti turns around and sweeps her wing, causing a wave of wind to carry Aultemus and Ciora up. She lifts her wings and begins to fly as she leaps off the edge, taking them with her. Oh shit! Ciora screams as Aultemus is also taken off guard. Aultemus zaps down to the ground in a flash, and looking around, he starts to try and coalesce snow into a big pile under Ciora. After a moment, Zenti lands softly on the snow and begins walking. Aultemus runs under Ciora, realizing the snow pile won't do anything, and catches her. He notices that some of Zenti's magic breaks Ciora's fall. What the fuck was all that about? Ciora yells as Aultemus tries to help her up. We don't have time to waste. He's your friend, right? So hurry up, Zenti yells back. I'm already slowing down to walk with you two, so consider it like I'm already giving you guys a break. Sorry, Aultemus whispers at Ciora. She looks at him, her anger breaking from his apology, but she looks back at Zenti in disgust. They get up and begin walking with her as the sun sets above them. After a few minutes, Zenti begins to fly slowly, gaining altitude but never going above the tree line. She subconsciously gains speed, forcing Aultemus and Ciora to speed up into a jog. This jogging pace continues for a while, after which the sun has gone under the horizon, leaving the two completely winded. How do we get her down? Aultemus asks, as they start walking, breathing heavily. Let me try, Ciora says between breaths. She reaches out a hand, and a few trees in front of Zenti light up in a wave of green energy. Ciora puts her arm down and watches. That didn't swat her down? She asks, surprised, putting her hand out again. The trees in front of Zenti glow again in a wave. The group below hear her yell something. 2 trees form translucent branches in front of her in an instant, catching her off guard as she yelps and falls down, catching herself right before hitting the ground. Aultemus and Ciora walk up to her as she brushes her clothes off. I can't believe I was knocked down like that. This is a Valkyrie forest. The trees never interact with us, Zenti screams. Aultemus begins to say, well, we should... I told them to, Ciora blurts out. What? Zenti sneers. You swatted me down. No, I told them to signal you to come down, but you kept going, so I told them to swat at you. They were much nicer than I would have been, Ciora barks back. Zenti gets furious and snaps her wings towards Ciora, sending her flying back into a tree, and she slumps down into the snow, still conscious. Hey! Aultemus yells, grabbing Zenti's upper arm. It's dark, we need... Zenti collapses the air around her, causing an extremely loud thwack to erupt from her wings. But Aultemus manages to keep his grip on her. Let go! Zenti hisses as she swings her free wing at him. Aultemus blocks it, the wing only minimally cutting into his arm. Aultemus shocks her left arm. Stop! Aultemus demands as he slowly intensifies the voltage. Zenti lets out a scream as the wind around them picks up, but Aultemus keeps upping the voltage as a response. Stop! Please! He pleads. Zenti finally relaxes and Aultemus immediately lets go, and they both collapse onto the floor. Aultemus looks at the cut on his arm. Ciora gets up and slowly walks over to them, sitting next to them on the floor. Are we all good? Siora sighs, scooting over to Aultemus and beckoning him to give her his arm. He shows her, and she begins healing it. This doesn't look too bad. Fuck you both, Zenti finally says after collecting herself. We need to hurry and we need to rest. We're tired and it's dark out, Aultemus firmly states, taking his arm back as Siora stops channeling magic. Look, Siora begins as she stretches out her right arm, revealing several markings, one especially faded. We care about him too. This marking, when it glows, it means that the holder is unconscious, and I'm allowed to gain some of their mana and magical energy. It's not glowing, so that means he's still alive and doing fine. We've already lost somebody, and we're not about to do that again. She gently grazes her finger over the middle mark and the top faded one. Zenti sighs and pulls out a book from her bag, flips to a marked page, and hands it to Aultemus. What's this? He asks, looking at the page. Siora looks over it as well. It's a heat rune to put on the ground while we sleep. I'm not great at fire magic, and the spirit magic elf isn't going to be either, so I assume that you can do something. Plus, I'm going to put an air globe around us, Zenti explains, getting up to stretch and pace around. Can you help me read this? I can't read your language, Aultemus asks Siora, who gets up and nods. The two of them run through the spell. Aultemus recognizes the design, but it looks slightly different than the ones from his home. They walk around in a circle, carving the runes in the dirt, matching the spell layout that links up in the center. Aultemus pumps magic and fire energy into the center rune, lighting up the entire structure and causing a heat to emanate from the floor, melting the snow in the circle around the border. This should last for a day, and anyone can pump magic into the center rune to keep it lit, Zenti explains. I know, we have something similar where I'm from, Aultemus responds. Seems even worlds apart, the universe isn't that big. Zenti doesn't react, but begins spinning in a dancing fluid motion as a gentle breeze picks up and forms a dome around the border of the circle. Zenti freezes with her wings outstretched and begins to float, crossing her legs and pulls her wings in. I'm going to bed, Zenti says abruptly. Just like that? Siora asks. Yes, I need to keep this spell up, but I can do it sleeping. Huh. Siora shrugs, sitting across from Zenti. Aultemus sits next to her, staring off into space. Hey all, Siora whispers. You okay? Aultemus continues to stare, but Siora can see his eyes occasionally move, looking at something else in front of him. I need to find him. This is my fault, he says, hesitating. Aultemus takes huge pauses between his thoughts, seemingly lost in thought or caught in emotion. You know, you can leave. I don't want you to feel like I'm keeping you here, Aultemus mutters. This is all just so stupid. I want to help. If it were me, I'd want the help. Don't worry, I'm not leaving, Siora smiles, putting her hand on his shoulder, but quickly retracts it. Aultemus continues to stare and shed a couple tears. He doesn't make a sound as he scrunches his eyes and grits his teeth. His hands turn into fists. Siora quickly begins to cast a spell, patting Aultemus on the back, but Aultemus notices and swats her hands, dissipating the mist. The two sort of awkwardly sit around for a few moments before turning around to fall asleep. Aultemus and Siora are jolted awake as they realize they're falling. Hitting the ground, they realize they only fell a few feet. They look around to see Zenti adjusting her backpack and already walking west. The two of them take a few moments to fully wake up as they groan from hitting the ground. They finally get up as Aultemus jogs up to meet Zenti as Siora pats her clothes off. Hey, hold on, we just woke, Aultemus shouts before getting interrupted. Did you toss us up? Siora yells, running up to catch up to them. Zenti keeps walking until she hears them close enough and begins to slowly fly ahead of them, ignoring their questions. Aultemus and Siora look at each other, but decide not to prod and continue onward, just glad that they got a full night's sleep. They continue to walk for a while, the sound of a nearby river slowly trickling down the mountainside to the south. Siora stops to put her hands on one of the trees and communes. Her hands and eyes glow faintly. Aultemus stops to look and notices after a beat that the rune representing Fuson on her arm also glows briefly. Afterward, Siora looks around as though seeing through all of the trees and noise. She checks the rune on her arm and stops glowing. and she notices for the first time that Rylo's rune has faded away. Her face falls as her eyes turn to their original shade. She rubs her arm, and she comes back from her trance. "Hey, do those glow when we're sleeping?" Aultemus asks, pointing at her arm. "No, just when you guys are knocked unconscious or faint or something like that," Ciora responds, eyes darting around still. The howling of the wind pierces the deafening silence of the mountains. A couple of flaps are heard as Zenti swoops down softly next to them, crunching the snow beneath her feet. "There's someone behind a tree a bit to our north," Ciora whispers. "They probably noticed you flying around. Did you see anybody?" "Yes, but it just looked like a blob. I thought my eyes were going bad," Zenti whispers. "What?" Ciora responds. "It wasn't the girl matching the description we have, plus it's kind of odd that anyone found us out here," Zenti explains. The three start to walk north, spreading themselves out a bit. After a moment, the large astro silhouette figure from before walks out from behind a tree a few paces away. It looks oddly skinny until it turns to face them, then the silhouette gives the impression it's in armor. Immediately, the three of them stop to look at each other. "Hey!" Aultemus yells as they notice a small shift in the top of the silhouette, where the halo begins to be pointing at Aultemus. "Oh, do you know what that is?" Zenti asks. Aultemus looks over surprised. "No, I was hoping you did." "You're the blue one," Zenti yelps. Aultemus slowly walks forward with his hands up. The figure doesn't react. Ciora follows and begins casting spirit magic to let the figure know that they're friendly. Slowly, they see a yellow star emerge from the ground as the silhouette shifts, causing them to clearly see arms and a tall, slim blade emerge from the mass. The yellow star, at the end of the sword, makes an elegant swift cut into the thick tree next to it, causing it to fall forward towards Ciora, who dashes out of the way as it crashes down. "What did you do?" Aultemus yells. "I was trying to tell it we were friendly," Ciora yells back, breathing quickly. "You sure?" he grunts back, but their attention fixates on the figure as it begins to move toward them. "This has got to be an Astromancer spell, which means you have to get rid of it," Aultemus comments to the group. "I'm going to look for Fuson. He has to be nearby if this thing is here," Zenti yells adamantly. "Hurry," Aultemus growls, charging himself with electricity. Zenti inches slowly behind one of the large trees, and after a few seconds, when she's totally concealed, the figure charges toward the tree she hid behind. Aultemus begins to move his fingers and arms as he adjusts the ground under the snow. Behind him, Ciora channels spirit magic into him. The figure continues to charge and gets caught in one of the depressions in the ground, causing it to trip. As it falls, Aultemus jerks his arms in the opposite direction, causing pillars to emerge from the ground and slam into the figure with a loud clang, knocking it down and forcing it to let go of the sword. The pommel is wider than the grip, as it has a gem-like geometric shape, while the edge guard is thick and appears to have the same shape as the horns on the figure, except they curve in toward the grip. The blade itself starts wider at the base and thins out, but widens back again as it goes toward the tip, which splits to form an open circle at the end. While it's not holding the sword, it's almost completely black except for the striking yellow star at the tip. As the figure gets up, bright yellow stars can be seen getting brighter and brighter within the nightscape, just like the rest of the figure. It extends its hand out as the sword floats up, snapping into its hand. It stands there, still, holding its sword as the star glows brighter, and it floats slowly out of the figure's hand, remaining parallel. Ciora stops channeling spirit magic into Aultemus by snapping her arms down and closing her hands. She gets ready by wrapping herself in roots, emitting a sage glow between the wood fibers. Aultemus charges the figure, weaving between the trees to obscure himself from its line of sight. The figure holds up one arm, the sword floating parallel to the ground above its hand as the star flashes and disappears. The sword reappears, shooting towards Ciora, catching her in the opening by the tip of the blade, sending her flying into a tree as the sword implants itself on another. Ciora, disoriented, has tree roots come out from the ground and begin to pull the sword out on their own. Aultemus zaps around at the figure, but the figure times his punch. As Aultemus is mid-kick in the air, the rock enveloped around his foot, he narrowly flies above the fist and lands his kick on the figure's head. The hit lands with a loud clang, the figure barely moving as Aultemus loses all of his momentum and falls inelegantly, immediately zapping away. Aultemus channels lightning arcs at the figure before it has a chance to react, maintaining his distance as the figure recoils and writhes at the impact of the lightning. Ciora hobbles up and swirls her hands around as she conjures roots and vines that emerge from the ground, twisting around the figure, slowly pulling it back into the ground at an extremely slow pace. Aultemus, after a moment, realizes the figure is sinking and shifts half of his focus from shooting lightning to help Siora try to sink the ground further. However, he has trouble, and the ground around the figure haphazardly crumbles, sinking it into different areas. After a few hellish moments, the figure is finally knee-deep in the ground as it puts its fists up, snapping some of the vines and roots, and begins to vibrate. Siora braces as she loses control of the vines and struggles to attach more to the figure. Aultemus drops his ground magic and channels lightning at full strength again. The figure's star suddenly flashes as a wave of light shoots out in a shockwave, knocking Aultemus and Siora back before some of the trees help her back up. The figure thrashes as it gets leverage, uppercutting the air and roots, and flashes white streaks of light, accented with the color spectrum, emerging from its arms and body. Finally, the eyes of the figure light up, and a pillar of light flashes as a huge explosion erupts from the figure, uprooting the 3 trees closest and sending Siora and Aultemus flying back into the snow in opposite directions. Zenti bolts up the base of the tree when she becomes obscured from the figure. The screaming wind is muffled by her feathers as she keeps flying up until she's past the tree line and gathers her bearings. After a couple moments, she dives back down and keeps her speed, masterfully and silently weaving through the tall, undisturbed crystal trees and Herculean branches. Zenti turns and continues to look around, but finally finds a cabin in the woods. As soon as she does, she silently hovers above the cabin and softly descends onto the wooden roof. As she lands on the cabin and listens in, she hears struggling and a magic humming and swirling sounds. Zenti flies back above the tree line. This time, as she descends, she picks up a monumental amount of speed, faster than her racing through the forest, and quickly turns to unleash a blade of wind, cutting the roof off the cabin, clean off, and sending a gale of wind forward, sending the roof flying off into the forest. The moment Zenti's eyes land on the inside of the cabin, they go wide. Valeria stands above a bound Fuson with spirit energy emanating around him, creating an afterimage effect of another Valkyrie beside him, a silver Valkyrie. Valeria lets go of the spell, sending Fuson and the afterimage into each other once more, as Fuson blinks, dazed and delirious. Zenti creates a geyser of wind, shooting Valeria up, and a second spear of wind rockets her into the stomach, sending her flying back as hard as Zenti can manage. Zenti rushes to Fuson to untie him and cuts the bindings with her feathers. Oh my gods, oh my gods. Are you okay? Zenti scrambles as she lifts him up, trying to use basic spirit magic on his forehead. Fuson witnesses and he gets his bearings together. Yeah. I'm fine, just give me a second. Fuson sits up. Okay. Zenti pants as she flies up and quickly locates Valeria. She envelops her in a sphere of wind, tossing her far north, and flies back to Fuson. Fuson meditates with his eyes closed as a soft green light glows around him. Fuson? She asks as he wakes up abruptly. His eyes appear to be their normal shade. Oh, hey, yeah, I'm ready. Let's get out of here. The two of them fly back east to meet the others as fast as they can. They hear a loud explosion as they near and the shockwave hits them, knocking them from the sky. What the hell is that? Fuson yells, shocked as he points over to a fallen tree in front of them. Oh, no. Zenti whispers as she gets up immediately and darts forward. Fuson following in kind, they catch a glimpse of Aultemus flying back, crashing into the tree, as Siora is face down in the snow. Fuson flies over to Siora and lifts her up. Fuson notices the silhouetted figure as Zenti lands in between them, pointing both wings back at Fuson. Air rushes from behind them and around her, hurling toward the figure. The figure starts to stomp toward Zenti as she starts to flap her wings, but stops halfway through, instead summoning 4 pillars of wind to trap the figure in the middle. Coming from each cardinal direction, Siora puts out an arm, struggling to infuse spirit magic into Zenti, causing the wind to get stronger. The figure continues to march forward, albeit much slower against the force of the wind, as though trudging through water. Aultemus struggles getting up from the snow, but quietly springs up the trees by zapping until he's well above the figure, and conjures an upside-down pyramid of rock. He grunts as the rock grows in mass, and once it's about the size of the figure, he lets it go and jumps onto the top. He lays flat on his back on top of it and shoots fire from his hands and feet, propelling the pyramid down quicker. Zenti sees it and focuses more air forward to keep the figure from moving. In one final motion, she claps her wings together, sending a shockwave of air as the figure stops moving for a moment. The pyramid lands directly on it, Aultemus rolling off of the pyramid as Zenti and Fuson fly over. Oh hey, you're back, Aultemus groans as he tries to get up. Yeah, that thing really hit me hard earlier. Hey all, Fuson begins but loses the words halfway through. We should go, now, Zenti spurts out, helping Aultemus up and looks over to Siora, who is mending some wounds but ready to go. Siora looks over, sees everyone helping Aultemus, and runs over to heal some bruises and cuts.